Hi boys and girls, today we are going to start our fourth marking period novel, The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. Due to the longevity of some of the chapters, some days you'll only get half of the chapter read to you, and then you'll have the questions to answer. So today we are going to read part of chapter 1. Chapter 1. When I stepped out into the bright sunlight from the darkness of the movie house, I had only two things on my mind: Paul Newman and a ride home. I was wishing I'd looked like Paul Newman. He looks tough, and I don't. But I guess my own looks aren't so bad. I have light brown, almost red hair and greenish gray eyes. I wish they were more gray, because I hate most guys that have green eyes, but I have to be content with what I have. My hair is longer than a lot of boys wear theirs, squared off in back and long at the front and sides. But I am a greaser, and most of my neighborhood rarely bothers to get a haircut. Besides, I look better with long hair. I had a long walk home and no company, but I usually loan it anyway, for no reason except that I like to watch movies undisturbed so I can get into them and live them with the actors. When I see a movie with someone, it's kind of uncomfortable, like having someone read your book over your shoulder. I'm different that way. I mean, my second oldest brother, Soda, who is 16 going on 17, never cracks a book at all, and my oldest brother, Daryl, who we call Darry, works too long and hard to be interested in a story or drawing a picture. So I'm not like them, and nobody in our gang digs movies and books the way I do. For a little while, I thought I was the only person in the world that did, so I loaned it. Soda tries to understand at least, which is more than Darry does. But then, Soda is different from anybody. He understands everything, almost. Like he's never hollering at me all the time the way Darry is, or treating me as if I was 6 instead of 14. I love Soda more than I've ever loved anyone, even Mom and Dad. He's always happy-go-lucky and grinning, while Darry's hard and firm and rarely grins at all. But then, Darry's gone through a lot in his 20 years, grown up too fast. Soda Pop never grew up at all. I don't know which way is the best. I'll find out one of these days. Anyway, I went on walking home, thinking about the movie, and then suddenly wishing I had some company. Greasers can't walk alone too much or they'll get jumped. Or someone will come by and scream greaser at them, which doesn't make you feel too hot, if you know what I mean. We get jumped by the socials. I'm not sure how you spell it, but it's an abbreviation of the socials, the jet set, the West Side rich kids. It's like the term greaser, which is used to class all of us boys on the East Side. We're poorer than the socials and the middle class. I reckon we're wilder, too. Not like the socials who jump greasers and wreck houses and throw beer blasts for kicks and get editorials in the paper for being a public disgrace one day and act like this is the next. Greasers are almost like hoods. We steal things and drive old souped up cars and hold up gas stations and have a gang fight once in a while. I don't mean I do things like that. Darry would kill me if I got into trouble with the police. Since Mom and Dad were killed in an auto wreck, the three of us get to stay together only as long as we behave. So Soda and I stay out of trouble as much as we can, and we're careful not to get caught when we can't. I only mean that most greasers do things like that, just like we wear our hair long and dress in blue jeans and t-shirts, or leave our shirt tails out and wear leather jackets and tennis shoes or boots. I'm not saying that either socias or greasers are better. That's just the way things are. I could have wanted to go to the movies. I could have waited to go to the movies until Darry or Soda Pop got off work. They would have gone with me, or driven me there, or walked along. Although Soda just can't sit still long enough to enjoy a movie, and they bore Darry to death. Darry thinks his life is great without inspecting other people's. Or I could have gotten one of the gang to come along, one of the four boys Darry and Soda and I have grown up with and consider family. We're almost as close as brothers. When you grow up in a tight-knit neighborhood like ours, you get to know each other real well. If I had thought about it, I could have called Darry and he would come by on his way home and pick me up. Or Two-Bit Matthews, one of our gang, would have come to get me in his car if I'd asked him. But sometimes I just don't use my head. It drives my brother Darry nuts when I do stuff like that, because I'm supposed to be smart. I make good grades and have a high IQ and everything, but I don't use my head. Besides, I like walking. I about decided I didn't like it so much, though, when I spotted the red Corvair trailing me. I was almost 2 blocks from home then, so I started walking a little faster. I had never been jumped, but I had seen Johnny after 4 socials got a hold of him, and it wasn't pretty. Johnny was scared of his own shadow after that. Johnny was 16 then. I knew it wasn't any use though, the fast walking. I mean, even before the Corvair pulled up beside me and 5 socios got out, I got pretty scared. I'm kind of small for 14, even though I have a good build, and those guys were bigger than me. I automatically hitched my thumbs in my jeans and slouched, wondering if I could get away if I make a break for it. I remember Johnny, his face all cut up and bruised, and I remember how he had cried when we found him, half conscious in the corner lot. Johnny had it awful rough at home. It took a lot to make him cry. I was sweating something fierce, although I was cold. I could feel my palms getting clammy and the perspiration running down my back. I get like that when I'm real scared. I glanced around for a pop bottle or a stick or something. Steve Randall, Soda's best buddy, had once held off 4 guys with a busted pop bottle, but there was nothing. So I stood there like a bump on a log while they surrounded me. I don't use my head. They walked around slowly, silently, smiling. "Hey, Grease," one of said in an over-friendly voice. "We're going to do you a favor, Greaser. We're going to cut all that long, greasy hair off." He had on a Madras shirt. I can still see it. Blue Madras. One of them laughed, then cussed me out in a low voice. I couldn't think of anything to say. There just isn't a whole lot you can say while waiting to get mugged, so I kept my mouth shut. "Need a haircut, Greaser?" The medium-sized blonde pulled a knife out of his back pocket and flipped the blade open. I finally thought of something to say. No, I was backing up, away from the knife. Of course I backed right into one of them. They had me down in a second. They had my arms and legs pinned down, and one of them was sitting on my chest, with his knees on my elbows. And if you don't think that hurts, you're crazy. I could smell English leather shaving lotion and stale tobacco, and I wondered foolishly if I would suffocate before they did anything. I was scared so bad I was wishing I would. I fought to get loose, and almost did for a second. Then they tightened up on me, and the one on my chest slugged me a couple of times. So I lay still, swearing at them between gasps. A blade was held against my throat. "How'd you like that haircut to begin just below your chin?" It occurred to me that they could kill me. I went wild. I started screaming for Soda, Derry, anyone. Someone put his hand over my mouth, and I bit it as hard as I could, tasting the blood running through my teeth. I heard a muttered curse and got slugged again, and they were stuffing a handkerchief in my mouth. One of them kept saying, "Shut him up, for Pete's sake, shut him up." Then there were shouts and the pounding of feet, and the sisters jumped up and left me lying there, gasping. I lay there and wondered what in the world was happening. People were jumping over me and running by me, and I was too dazed to figure it out. Then someone had me under the armpits and was hauling me to my feet. It was Derry. "Are you all right, pony boy?" He was shaking me, and I wish he stopped. I was dizzy enough anyway. I could tell it was Derry, though, partly because of the voice, and partly because Derry's always rough with me without meaning to be. "I'm okay. Quit shaking me, Derry. I'm okay." He stopped instantly. "I'm sorry." He wasn't really. Derry isn't ever sorry for anything he does. It seems funny to me that he should look just exactly like my father and act exactly the opposite from him. My father was only 40 when he died, and he looked 25, and a lot of people thought Derry and Dad were brothers instead of father and son. But they only looked alike. My father was never rough with anyone without meaning to be. Derry is 6'2", broad-shouldered and muscular. He has dark brown hair that kicks out in front and a slight cowlick in the back, just like Dad's. But Derry's eyes are his own. He's got eyes that are like 2 pieces of pale blue-green ice. They got a determined set to them, like the rest of him. He looks older than 20, tough, cool, and smart. He would be real handsome if his eyes weren't so cold. He doesn't understand anything that is not plain hard fact, but he uses his head. I sat down again, rubbing my cheek where I'd been slugged the most. Derry jammed his fists in his pockets. "They don't hurt you too bad, did they?" They did. I was smarting and aching, and my chest was sore, and I was so nervous my hands were shaking, and I wanted to start bawling. But you just don't say that to Derry. "I'm okay." Soda Pop came lopping back. By then I had figured that all the noise I had heard was the gang coming to rescue me. He dropped down beside me, examining my head. You got cut up a little, huh, pony boy?" I looked at him blankly. "I did?" He pulled out a handkerchief, wet the end of it with his tongue, and pressed it gently against the side of my head. "You're bleeding like a stuck pig." "I am?" "Look." He showed me the handkerchief, reddened as if by magic. "Did they pull a blade on you?" I remembered the voice. "Need a haircut, Greaser?" The blade must have slipped while he was trying to shut me up. "Yeah." Soda is handsomer than anyone else I know. Not like Derry. Soda's movie star kind of handsome, the kind that people stop on the street to watch go by. He's not as tall as Derry, and he's a little slimmer, but he has a finely drawn, sensitive face that somehow manages to be reckless and thoughtful at the same time. He's got dark gold hair that he combs back, long and silky and straight. In the summer, the sun bleaches it to shining white wheat gold. His eyes are dark brown, lively, dancing, recklessly laughing eyes that can be gentle and sympathetic one moment and blazing with anger the next. He has dad's eyes, but Soda is one of a kind. He can get drunk in a drag race or dancing without ever getting near alcohol. In our neighborhood, it's rare to find a kid who doesn't drink once in a while, but Soda never touches a drop. He doesn't need to. He gets drunk on just plain living, and he understands everybody. He looked at me more closely. I looked away hurriedly because if you want to know the truth, I was starting to bawl. I knew I was as white as I felt, and I was shaking like a leaf. Soda just put his hands on my shoulder. Easy, pony boy. They ain't gonna hurt you no more. I know, I said, but the ground began to blur, and I felt hot tears running down my cheeks. I brushed them away impatiently. I'm just a little spooked, that's all. I drew a quivering breath and quit crying. You just don't cry in front of Daddy, not unless you're hurt like Johnny had been the day we found him in the vacant lot. Compared to Johnny, I wasn't hurt at all. Soda rubbed my hair. You're an okay kid, Pony. I had to grin at him. Soda can make you grin no matter what. I guess it's because he's always grinning so much himself. You're crazy, Soda. Out of your mind. Daddy looked as if he'd like to knock our heads together. You both nuts. Soda merely cocked one eyebrow, a trick he'd picked up from Two-Bit. It seems to run in this family. Daddy stared at him for a second, then cracked a grin. Soda Pop isn't afraid of him like everyone else and enjoys teasing him. I'd just as soon tease a full-grown grizzly, but for some reason, Daddy seems to like being teased by Soda. Our gang had chased the Socias to their cars and he'd rocked at them. They came running towards us now, 4 lean, hard guys. They were all tough as nails and looked it. I'd grown up with them, and they accepted me, even though I was younger, because I was Darian and Soda's kid brother, and I kept my mouth shut good. Steve Randall was 17, tall and lean with thick, greasy hair he kept combed in complicated swirls. He was tacky, smart, and Soda's best buddy since grade school. Steve's specialty was cars. He could lift a hubcap quicker and more quietly than anyone in the neighborhood, but he also knew cars upside down and backwards, and he could drive anything on wheels. He and Soda worked at the same gas station, Steve part-time and Soda full-time, and their station got more customers than any other in town. Whether that was because Steve was so good with cars or because Soda attracted girls like honey draws flies, I couldn't tell you. I liked Steve only because he was Soda's best friend. He didn't like me. He thought I was a tag-along and a kid. Soda always took me with them when they went places, as if they were even if they were taking girls. And that bugged Steve. It wasn't my fault. Soda always asked me. I didn't ask him. Soda doesn't think I'm a kid. Two-Bit Matthews was the oldest of the gang and the wisecracker of the bunch. He was about 6 feet tall, stocky in build, and very proud of his long, rusty-colored sideburns. He had gray eyes and a wide grin, and he couldn't stop making funny remarks to save your life. You couldn't shut up that guy. He always had to get his 2 bits worth in, hence his name. Even his teachers forgot his real name was Keith, and we hardly remembered he had one. Life was one big joke to Two-Bit. He was famous for shoplifting and his black-handled switchblade, which he couldn't have acquired without his first talent. He was always smarting off to the cops. He really couldn't help it. Everything he said was so irresistibly funny that he just had to let the police in on it to brighten up their dull lives. That's the way he explained it to me. He liked fights, blondes, and for some unfathomable reason, school. He was still a junior at 18 and a half, and he had never learned anything. He just went for kicks. I liked him real well because he kept us laughing at ourselves, as well as other things. He reminded me of Will Rogers. Maybe it was the grin. Alright, boys and girls, I'm going to stop there. Please continue to answer the questions following this video. If you have any questions, I'll see you at our Zoom meeting.